All right, if you would turn to 1 Samuel chapter 27. And had been thinking of maybe skipping a few chapters that didn't pertain to Saul, because that's where our main focus has been in our study on Israel wants a king. And I thought maybe this would be one of those chapters, but Saul is, his presence is still here. So we'll go ahead, and it's a short chapter, so we'll get through it tonight easily. And then next week, chapter 28, we'll see a whole lot of Saul and more of his wickedness, and it comes out. Not necessarily against David, but anytime someone goes to someone that's of witchcraft, it's never a good thing, is it? God's people have no business doing that, and we'll talk more about that next time. I won't get into that tonight. 1 Samuel chapter 27, verse 1, and David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape into the land of the Philistines, and Saul shall despair of me to seek me any more in any coast of Israel, so shall I escape out of his hand. So David's plan now is, he's already had the opportunity to kill Saul at least twice that we've looked at. And he didn't do it. We know that the Lord had a hand in that. The Lord prevented him from doing that. Saul knows about it. David confronted him both times about it afterwards. And it appears as though, to a certain degree, they kind of sort of made up a little bit, just from David pleading with Saul and pleading his case to Saul. But Saul's still chasing him. And again, it goes back to pride, I believe. One, and then of course we know that Saul has had this evil spirit put upon him by the Lord. And that's the one, that evil spirit is what seems to be driving Saul to do what he's doing against David. And as far as trying to hunt David down. So David's solution to this is, I'll just leave the country. I'll go across the border with the Philistines and live with them. Well, you would think that would be the last place that David would want to go, since, you remember, he is the one who killed their greatest warrior, Goliath. So he's going to go to the Philistines to escape Saul. His hope is that if he goes to the Philistines, that Saul will stop chasing him, and that'll be the end of that. And he also, if you notice there in the very first part of that, it says David said in his heart. In other words, he said to himself, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. He knows if he doesn't leave, or at least he thinks if he doesn't leave Israel, that he's going to die at the hands of Saul at some point. That's the way things seem to be going. Verse 2, and David arose and he passed over with the 600 men that were with him into Achish, the son of Maoch, king of Gath. Now remember, he's been there before, a few chapters back. And he wasn't well received. And he got scared and left. But now, this time, he's got 600 men with him. It's a difference. He can defend himself. And David dwelt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, even David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's wife. So it's not just 600 men. This is a lot of people. This is a small nation if you want to get down to it. You've got 600 men with their households. What is their households? Well, their wives, their children, possibly grandchildren, possibly servants. We don't know. It doesn't tell us. But in Bible terms, That's usually what household meant. Anybody that was living in the house of a man was considered his household, whether it was family or servants. So you could have a few thousand people there, and they're living in with the Philistines. And I don't have the map up here tonight, but if you look at a map, the land of the Philistines was not as big as Israel. And so you've got a very large number of people, and of course, the Philistines welcome them in, which is kind of odd, but that's how much they hate Saul. And it was told Saul that David was fled to Gath, and he sought no more again for him. So David calls off his dogs, in other words, or not Saul calls off his dogs. He quits chasing David when he finds out David has gone to Gath. There's no point. And of course, Saul's got to wonder, are the Philistines going to let David stay? Or are they going to kill him? Maybe they'll take care of what he's been trying to do himself. And David said unto Achish, if I have now found grace in thine eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country, that I may dwell there, for why should thy servant dwell in the royal city with thee? So David is asking the king there, instead of us living here in the capital city, give us some property out in the country, and we'll go off and be by ourselves. No harm done. We'll leave you. You leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, type of thing. Then Achish gave him Ziklag that day, wherefore Ziklag pertaineth unto the kings of Judah unto this day. So, at least at the time of this writing, Ziklag was still a part of Israel. It belonged to Judah. All because it had been given to David. Now, we know all of Palestine, or Philistine, where the Philistines lived, all that property belonged to Israel anyway. That was part of the promise that God had given to Abraham and his descendants, and that was part of what Joshua was supposed to take when they first moved into the land of Canaan, where the Philistines lived, was part of that property that was supposed to have been taken. And at times it was, but for the most part throughout the Old Testament, the Philistines are still there. Verse 7, and at the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was a full year and 4 months. So he lived there 16 months. It's almost half a year, almost a year and a half. And we think, well, that's not very long, but it kind of is. And David and his men went up and invaded the Geshurites and the Gezerites and the Amalekites. For those nations were of old the inhabitants of the land, as thou goest to Shur, even unto the land of Egypt. So these people, remember, all of that property was supposed to belong to Israel. God had given it to them. What's David doing? He's taking it back. He's going in and wiping out these people, these different nations, and taking land for, unbeknownst to the Philistines, he's taking land for Judah. And it goes all the way down. Where's it go down to? All the way to Egypt. What is that? Gaza Strip, isn't it? What do we see over there today? Palestinians who falsely claim to be descendants of the Philistines claim that is theirs, and it's not. And David smote the land and left neither man nor woman alive, and took away the sheep and the oxen and the asses and the camels and the apparel, and returned and came to Achish. So they killed all the people and kept all their possessions. David's amassed a great fortune by now by doing all this. And Achish said, "Whither have ye made a road today?" So, where have you gone? Where have you been today? And David said, "Against the south of Judah, and against the south of the Jerahmeelites, and against the south of the Kenites." And David saved neither man nor woman alive to bring tidings to Gath, saying, lest they should tell on us, saying, so did David, and so will be his manner all the while he dwelleth in the country of the Philistines. So the reason, it seems, that David has killed all the men and women is so there will be nobody to take back when he goes back to visit the king in Gath, so that they can warn the Philistines, because he's afraid that they're going to come back and somebody's going to get word back of what he's been doing and to the king, and then the Philistines are going to turn on him. And Achish believed David. He believed him. Now, David didn't necessarily lie to him. He just didn't tell him everything. He hath made his people Israel utterly to abhor him. Therefore he shall be my servant forever. So, Achish believes that David is going to be his servant forever. He thinks he's got control of David. Boy, is he wrong. Let's read the first two verses of the next chapter, and next time we'll pick up with verse 3 in chapter 2, because the first two verses go along with what we've been reading tonight. And it came to pass in those days that the Philistines gathered their armies together for warfare to fight with Israel. And Achish said unto David, know thou assuredly that thou shalt go out with me to battle, thou and thy men. They're going to go fight Israel. And he's telling David, I want you to go with us. You and all your army, come with us. And David said to Achish, surely thou shalt know what thy servant can do. And Achish said to David, therefore will I make thee keeper of mine head forever. So David tells him, you know what we're capable of with our army. You've seen and heard the stories of what we've done. And the king tells him, I'll make you keeper of mine head forever. You're going to be second in command. You're going to be the king's protector. In other words, you're going to be his elite fighting force, his special forces, if you will. Well, remember, the Philistines are bitter enemies with Israel. And where does David come from? The heart of Israel. That's not going to work very long, is it? We won't see that in the next in chapter 28. The story goes on, but next time in the verses, starting in verse 3 in chapter 28, we begin to see Saul again and him with the witch of Endor. Some try to say that this is where Saul proves that he's saved. I don't believe so, and we're going to look at that when we get to it. So that's all we have for tonight.